Hi everyone, this is the first video I've made in a while due to the fact that I changed jobs and needed to relocate to California. So in fact I'm in Silicon Valley now, and knowing that this was going to happen this year, I made sure that I went to plenty of track days last year, and so I'll be making sure to make some videos about the findings from those track days last year in the weeks and months ahead. But I wanted to make this video today due to the fact that in the last few days there's been quite some articles about an issue called porpoising, so if we watch this video, so you see the car bouncing up and down. Basically the underbody or the diffuser is going into stall due to the car getting too low to the ground. The amount of air going, having to squeeze through a very small gap and then having to expand a lot means that the airflow just isn't able to stay attached, and therefore when it stalls, the car suddenly loses downforce. It gains it once it rises back up again, and you go into this oscillatory motion. I want to discuss why that is actually such an issue or such a difficult setup compromise for the teams, or at least what I think what makes it difficult. It might be that I'm totally wrong, but who knows? This is at least my take on it. So this is an illustration of a racing car suspension I found on the internet. So credit goes to whoever made this. This is not my illustration. I only labeled what is what. So assuming the right bottom corner is the front of the vehicle, we have the left push rod with the left bell crank, left spring and damper. The same on the right hand side, and the only thing which is maybe slightly strange to people used to dealing with passenger cars is the fact that there's this heave or third spring and damper. And there's the front anti-roll bar, which looks nothing like a normal anti-roll bar. But quickly going over how that would work. So if the vehicle was rolling to the right with the right hand suspension going in bump and the left going in rebound, with the bell cranks transmitting the motion into the linkages to the anti-roll bar and the heave spring and damper assembly. When it's in pure roll, there's going to be almost no motion on the heave spring, and it's translated purely into a twisting motion of this anti-roll bar. And by adjusting the torsional stiffness of this anti-roll bar, either with the thickness of this rod or wall stiffness of a tube, you can adjust the roll stiffness of the front of the vehicle. There's probably something very similar on the rear, and then by adjusting the torsional stiffness of this anti-roll bar, you can adjust the handling balance. In pure heave, then both sides, so in the illustrated example, both sides are in bump. For heave, for droop, it would be just the opposite. But in bump, the linkages will be both going in the same direction, and therefore pulling on compressing this heave damper and spring assembly with no rotation of the anti-roll bar. Besides the spring and damper rate that you get from the regular left and right spring and dampers, you get an additional stiffness from this spring and additional damping from this damper. The reason being that it's used especially on racing cars was with a lot of downforce, so that you can keep single wheel input relatively soft, but have the vehicle quite a lot stiffer than if there was no heave spring in pure heave, to keep a relatively tight control on the ride height of the vehicle for optimizing, or having a relatively consistent aero platform. So worth pointing out for single wheel input, the suspension, due to the fact that the left and right are linked together, is not completely independent anymore, in the sense that if you have an input on one side, there is going to be some transfer to the other side. So imagine the right hand side is hitting a bump. There will be a small amount of twisting of the anti-roll bar and a small amount of compression of the third spring, while pulling on the linkage to the other side, and therefore pushing out the left-hand side in this case, and therefore in effect it'll be raising the car body up versus the left-hand wheel. And this will soon bring us to why that is a problem, because so one possible solution to the porpoising problem as the car is going down the straight is you simply add some Jounce. You just add Jounce bumper to this third spring and damper assembly. So that typically is an elastomer element, and the more you compress it, the stiffer it gets. So where like the blue would be, like if there wasn't a porpoising problem, relatively linear as the spring gets compressed. To eliminate this problem, potentially you could say, well, we just add a Jounce bumper in the area of the damper rod, which is outside of the damper, and then as that gets squished, there's a minimum ride height that that under which you don't allow the vehicle to go, and therefore as long as that is above the ride height at which the stall will occur, you don't have a problem. So problem solved, right? Well, not quite, because there's a compromise in riding curbs now. So remember how the two sides are not completely independent. Once you make the third spring have this Jounce bumper, it means that once it compresses to a certain extent, it becomes pretty much solid, and therefore at that point the independence between the right and left side suspensions is pretty much gone, and so any further compression on the right side gets translated into the left side suspension being pushed out, and so this will make the curb riding performance of the cars significantly worse, towards the end of travel. So it's not going to be a problem for small bumps, but the problem is, in order to minimize lap time, drivers often have to really aggressively cut curbs, and so especially sausage curbs and the like are going to be especially problematic, especially considering the fact that this year there was the move to 18-inch wheels, which means there's a much smaller tire sidewall to begin with, making curb cutting a much bigger challenge than before anyway. So in fact, had there not been this porpoising problem, and had there not been this change to ground effect aero, then I suspect then purely for changing to 18-inch wheels, you actually need more compliant suspension than it was the case with the 13-inch wheels. So it's this combination of the ground effect cars requiring quite stiff suspension, and also this porpoising problem in combination with the 18-inch wheels, which is really going to give the teams a headache. So that was my take. Maybe I'm wrong. If please let me know what you think in the comments below. Maybe there's a better solution to this problem. Hope it was interesting. Until next time.